Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Austria once again and we're going to have a look at yet another of the Hans beers. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Hans Feigl, my Austrian beer mule living in Vienna. It's thanks to him that from now on you guys will get to enjoy a steady stream of Austrian reviews here on Rampant Lion Reviews. As I've told you in previous Austrian videos, it's very difficult to get a hold of Austrian beer without being inside the country itself. So to have people like Hans facilitating these reviews, it really is a bit of a treat, and I've been enjoying working my way through the beers that he's sent me so far. You might have seen that recently he sent me a box filled with Viennese microbrewed Vienna Lagers among a few other things, and these beers have been really good, so I hope that you guys watching have enjoyed these reviews. And once again, a massive thank you to Hans for facilitating this one and the other Austrian reviews we've been doing over the last little while. But yeah, for this review then, we are actually going to move away from Vienna. We're going to go to the opposite side of the country, to the kind of northwestern part of Austria, I guess you could say, and we are going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before, and these guys, I guess you could say, have a little bit of a twist as well. So yeah, for this one we are going to go to Salzburg, or Hof bei Salzburg to be specific, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brauhaus Gusswerk. So this beer is their Vienna Lager. It comes in at 5.2% ABV, and this one is organic, or bio as the Austrians would call it. But yeah, really curious to see what this one has in store for us and whether it varies a lot from what we've had from the other ones. But I've been really enjoying getting familiar with the style a little bit more. I've always loved the Vienna Lager, but to actually be able to try these kind of authentic microbrewed ones, I think is a real treat. So yeah, my first organic Vienna Lager here on Rampant Lion Reviews. Let's see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brauhaus Gusswerk. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Austrian beers that I'm reviewing for you, and that's being added to quite gradually at the moment because we still have some of these Hans beers to work our way through. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brauhaus Gusswerk. So, as I've mentioned to you already, Brauhaus Gusswerk are based in Hof bei Salzburg in Austria, which is in the kind of northwestern part of the country, I guess you could say. And the brewery itself was founded back in 2007 by Reinhold Barta. So he originally studied engineering and specialised in food and biotechnology, and then he worked in a number of breweries both in Austria and abroad, as well as becoming a sommelier, and these days he is also a lecturer at the Vienna University of Applied Sciences. So very strong background, this guy, I have to say. But the original brewery was based in the old Oberascher Bell factory, which is in the northern part of the city. This building had made some of the biggest bells in Europe from 1618, its foundation, up until 2003. But over time, in this building, they scaled up the brewery, and by 2013 they just, they really needed somewhere bigger, and so they moved to their current base at Hof bei Salzburg. So the brewery are a strictly organic operation, and they follow the Demeter standards, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which were originally established in Munich back in 1924, and then they were re-established after the war in 1954 as well. But these apparently are based on Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy, we could say, of an esoteric and spiritual world. I didn't research that too much because it was, I thought it was really quite complicated. The article was massive and things like that, so we're not going to go into exactly what the Demeter standards are too much. But they're basically, as we say, all organic. They source their malt from a certified company in Grieskirchen, which is Oberösterreich, the northern part of the country. The hops also come from the Mühlviertal, which is one of the Austrian hop growing regions, again in Oberösterreich. And they also have their own water spring as well, which goes untreated. So yeah, very kind of raw organic beers, these ones, from what I gather. But as of July 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 50 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And if you take a look at the website, there must be about 25 or so, maybe even 30. Kind of regulars just listed at the bottom of the page. Actually, you can see all the little icons there and click on them, so do check out that website. But yeah, that is all I could really find on Brauhaus Gusswerk to share with you here on this video. But if you want to learn more, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your history section then. Let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself. So yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is quite nice. It's actually a really nice kind of combination between old school and normal, or old school and modern, I should say. Ugh, mincing my words in this video. But there you can see lovely Austrian eagle there. I don't know if that's a symbol actually of Oberösterreich maybe, but yeah, aus der österreichischen Bio-Brauerei. So yeah, that's, like I said to you, these guys really market themselves as the Austrian organic brewery. You can also see that that is on the bottle cap there as well, and they've also got the brewery symbol down there too. It's quite nice actually, but it says an old Wiener beer speciality. Few Austrian beer types have such awareness as the Vienna Lager, or had such awareness or such fame, if you like, as the Vienna Lager did in the 1900s. This organic new interpretation is made with a full malt body and a typical and has a typical sort of Bernstein. This is like a sort of coppery, ambery type colour. So yeah, German translation is actually pretty good. I still remember quite a bit of it, but I suppose the Swedish, speaking the Swedish does help there. But yeah, there you can see the European Union organic symbol on there, and you've also got it's vegan friendly as well. But yeah, 330ml bottle. This one, I'm not sure exactly what this would have cost, Hans, but the whole box, I only sent them, like, you know, it only cost about €40 for that plus the postage, so not madly expensive actually, which is kind of impressive. But yeah, 5.2% Vienna Lager. This one apparently is hopped with Müllviertler Maling, Tettnang Tradition, Tettnang Aroma and Sapphire, with a malt base of Pilsner and Vienna malts. So this should be quite interesting actually. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So there we are. This bottle cap will be getting kept, of course, because it's a unique one that I don't have. So in you go. And yeah, we'll get this guy out and into the glass. 5.2% Vienna Lager from Brauhaus Gusswerk in Hof bei Salzburg. Hof bei Salzburg, incidentally, is to the kind of northeast, eastish of the main central part of the city. So yeah, let's get that back down so that my OCD is happy. And there we go. So before the head disappears on this one then, you can see that this beer has poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy coloured head. That's just fading away to be a very kind of thin foamy layer. But around the edge of the glass, it's got a, I'd say it's a little bit thicker there. But yeah, I think it's a nice kind of creamy coloured edge to this one, to be honest with you. And that is just fading away to be a really nice kind of thin foamy layer. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty nice. And as you can see, this one is quite a bit lighter in colour than the other ones we've come across before. This one certainly has a little bit more of an almost kind of paleo, like a West Coast paleo type colour to it. This one's certainly a more kind of light amber rather than a kind of coppery type colour actually. So this is really interesting. Remember that the colour of your beer depends on one, the type of malts that you use, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. The type of malts that you use determines the magnitude of the colour normally. And then the length of your wort boil, that caramelizes the sugar a little bit more the longer you do it, and that gives you a slightly darker colour. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts that you stick in the beer as well, of course, will play a role in determining the colour too. But when it comes to a Vienna Lager, those factors are not usually at play. Usually that's for like Berliner Weisses and Goses and other types of sour beer. But in terms of a Vienna Lager, not out with the realms of possibility. But as I say, this is certainly one of the lighter coloured examples that I've come across in recent times. And I mean, remember when it comes to the, when it comes to these lager beers, the definition of a lager is a cold temperature fermentation, bottom fermenting yeast. In other words, it ferments between usually 8 to 12 degrees Celsius. Ales ferment with top fermenting yeast between about 15 and 18 degrees Celsius. Lots of different types of lagers, of course. And for me, the Vienna Lager tends to have a nice kind of sweet bready character to it, and a bit of a kind of brown sugary, caramelly, biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, this one I think could be really interesting, potentially a little bit different, of course. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. Oh, that does smell really nice. Yeah. So straight away with this beer, you have that lovely sort of bready backbone. What I will say about this one is that on first impression, it comes across as being slightly crisper, and you certainly get a little bit more biscuit out of this one. That's most likely due to the Pilsner malt that's in this. But it does have the typical things that you would expect of the Vienna malt, that slightly more brown bready character, a sweeter caramel, and a wee bit of a kind of biscuity element too, which I really like. So yeah, the aroma out of this one, I think, is pretty nice. So yeah, I think straight away this one comes across as potentially one of the crisper of the Vienna lagers that we've tried on the channel so far. It certainly has a wee bit of an almond, that's certainly a little bit of that kind of Pilsner malt thing sort of going on. And as I've said in previous lager reviews, I always find the German lagers tend to be a bit more crisp, the Czech ones tend to be a bit more yeasty, and then the Austrian ones are a little bit more in between that actually. But this beer does smell really nice. Let's try and dissect the aroma a little bit more for you. So as I say with this beer, the backbone of it, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of crisp white bready note to this one. On top of that, you start to get a wee bit more of a slightly kind of wholemeal, slightly sweet brown bready character in there. But yeah, there's a wee bit of a sweet caramel in the middle of the nose, of course, and a lot of McVitie's digestive biscuit to this one, and you can smell the crispness of the Pilsner malt out of this. As I've said to you before, Pilsner malt's a bit of an annoying one to describe in terms of aroma, because it's really the vibe that it contributes to the beer. It will give you a little bit of biscuitiness as well, depending on exactly what type of Pilsner malt it is, but you can really smell that Pilsner malty crispness in this one, and it's just backed up by the brown bread, the slightly kind of sweet brown bread, and the slightly more oily kind of caramelly note that we would expect from the Vienna malt as well. So this is a really interesting combination. Like I say, it really comes across with a kind of crisp backbone, if you like. And one thing I used to pick out a little bit in the German bio beers that I used to have, you could smell a little bit of a difference in the grains, but with this one you really don't get that. It really smells pretty straight up and really, really authentic in that sense. But yeah, you certainly get a lot of crispness out of this beer. That's the main highlight of this one for me. But on the malty, the hoppy side of things, we should say, I think we don't need to say too much more about the malty side of this beer, other than it potentially has one or two little woody undertones. But yeah, the hoppy side of things is what you would expect. There's a little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness to the beer. There's a wee bit of a kind of herbal quality to it as well. And you've also got a bit of a kind of more floral aromatic note out of this one. Sapphire always has a little bit of a kind of more pungent, a little bit more of a kind of pungent floral aromaticity and a wee touch of spice, and you can certainly get that out of this beer. But at the front of the nose, you've got a more kind of zesty, grassy type element to this beer as well, and I can really appreciate how that goes together in this beer also. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard as well. But yeah, lovely, lovely smelling beer on the hoppy side of things, and you can smell a bit of smoothness, which I think must be the Mulvirtal hop that's in this one. I'm not really familiar with that hop actually, so that is something we will need to explore a little bit more. But most of these hops are quite similar, if you like, to the likes of the Czech Sats, the Slovenian Styrian Goldings and stuff, and then the German Hallertaus and Tettnangers. It's a similar character you'll get out of these kind of noble type hops, I guess we could say. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer is pretty damn nice. On the fruity side of things then, you certainly get a wee bit of that. You get a wee touch of a kind of orangey note from the Sapphire, of course. That's one of the trademarks of Sapphire. But other than that, you know, it's quite typical of what you would expect of the style. There's a teeny little hint of a slightly red fruit out of this one, but that's very, very minimal. But other than that, you get a nice kind of oily, peary character. I do get some nice kind of sultana-like notes out of it, and by that I mean kind of dried white, green grapes. And I think there's also a bit of there's a wee bit of a kind of apple-y character to it as well. So, yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one is, the aroma that comes out of this beer, I think, is very nice actually. Quite different from the other Vienna lagers that we've had before, right enough. But that's the interesting thing about this, doing this little mini series almost. We're getting to try ones with all these different subtleties. Some of them are a bit more grainy, some of them are sweeter, some of them are oilier, of course, as well. And this one certainly seems to be a little bit more kind of crisp and pilsnery in its aroma, that's for sure. But the fruity side of it is pretty similar to what we've had before. A wee bit of a kind of sultana note to it, a little bit of a kind of oily pear, one or two little tiny fruity characters to it as well, sort of red fruity characters to it as well. But yeah, a wee bit of an apple comes out of it when mixes in with the grassy notes too. So yeah, a really interesting smelling beer, this one. And I love the variation in these. I love getting more familiar with styles that I quite enjoy. But yeah, I think it is about time to try this one then. So this one is the Vienna Lager, 5.2% ABV from Brauhaus Gusswerk in Hof bei Salzburg in the kind of northwestern part of Austria, I guess we could say. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers and Prost. Oh yeah, that is quite nice, I have to say. First impression, as we say, it's actually got a bit more oily character to it than the aroma gives you the impression of. Actually, I'm almost tempted to say this beer has a little bit. It almost comes across in a certain way as a hybrid between it's almost got a little touch of Märzen type quality to it for me. It's got a little bit of that kind of biscuity sort of thing, but it's got the more oily character that you'd expect of the Vienna Lager. So this is certainly quite a quirky one, I have to say. Yeah, but you can tell it's a lovely clean beer, this one. The water quality in this one, you can kind of taste that cleanliness in this beer as well. And that's not surprising. You know, Austria, a big mountainous country. They're going to have good water there. But yeah, this is very nice. Thumbs up to Gusswerk for this one. Very easy to drink as well. That's one of my only complaints about these beers that I've had, is that they're all 330ml bottles rather than half litres. But when these are microbreweries, that's what they've got to do. But yeah, thumbs up to Gusswerk for this. Like I say, first impression is a bit more of a kind of biscuity and crisp, but still slightly more oily and clean. Vienna Lager, this one, but a wee bit of a Märzen quality, that's for sure. But let's try and break down the flavour of this for you and describe it a wee bit more kind of succinctly. So yeah, the middle third of your palate then, you can feel that nice sort of smooth brown bready note to this one. You can feel that. It's actually quite a light brown bready note, but it just kind of sits there very nicely, and it sweetens up the further that you go into the aftertaste. So lovely, smooth, brown bready characters to this one. Then as you go towards the back of that, as you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you do get a wee bit more of a kind of bread crusty note. You can feel that the breadiness is a little bit thicker actually, and as you go onto the back, as you go onto that back third of your palate, there are some very, very nice kind of more yeasty elements to the beer. But yeah, middle third of your palate is quite straight shooting in this one. So like I say, kind of slightly crisp brown bready base there. There's one or two woody elements sitting underneath the kind of front half of that middle third of the palate. And as I say, at either end you get a bit more of a kind of bigger bread crusty note out of it. Sitting on top of that as well, you can feel a slightly sweeter caramelly layer out of this one. So in the dead center, it's like a circle, and in the dead center of that, of the middle third of your palate, you get a more kind of concentrated caramel there. But as you move further out from it, you get more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So I do like how that goes together in this beer. So yeah, the brown sugary side of this one, as I say, it is quite interesting because it's very, very biscuity. But if you go from the centre of your palate towards the back of that middle third of your palate, you can certainly feel it gets a little bit more of a kind of crisp vibe from the Pilsner malt on this one, and that comes out a wee bit more into the aftertaste. So you can feel the crispness of this beer just, you know, building up a little bit more, building up a wee bit more. The further you go into the aftertaste. But like I say, this beer, it does have a wee touch of a Märzen type vibe for me, and the Märzen is quite a biscuity, crisp lager. I've always found the German ones, as I say, to be a little bit crisper, and that's probably the crispness and that slightly more biscuity vibe that this beer has that's really making me think of that. But the Pilsner malt, I think, is a nice touch in this one, but you've got that smoother Vienna malt in this one, obviously backing it up. But yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. So yeah. So I think that that covers really everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate in this. But I like it. It sweetens up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste as well. But let's focus on the other things. But yeah, back third of your palate then. So if you go to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up there and a bit of a kind of more grainy bread crusty thing. And then into the back third of your palate, you can feel a bit more. You can feel a little bit more of kind of. You can feel a little bit of that sort of grainy brown bready backbone there. On top of that, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of sweeter. I think I do get a little bit more of a slightly toasty caramel out of this sitting on top of that brown bready layer, which is quite interesting too. And the breadiness does thicken up, but on top of that, you can certainly feel a more airy and sweeter brown bready kind of thing in this one. And it's really nice how that side of the beer comes across. The yeasty notes in this one are not as big as we've had in some of the other examples of this style in this little mini series, but yeah, you do still get a bit of that kind of lighter, more airy brown bready note in this one. You can feel if you start at the back of the palate, it's not quite as tall as that, but the flavour is a bit taller on that back third of your palate. It condenses down, and as you push further forward into the middle third of your palate, it's quite condensed together. But yeah, a nice crisp, but still quite sweet malty base to this one, and the bready notes are not as thick in this one as the others that we've had before. But let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then, and the hops have a lovely smoothness to them, and I do wonder if that's the Moorviertal hop that's in this one. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, so I do apologise for that. But yeah, back corners of the palate then, you get a nice little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness out of this one. The earthiness does have a slight more pungency, so I do wonder if that's maybe one of the things with the Austrian hops. But as you move further forward, the earthiness smooths out a little bit more. You get a wee touch of herbal quality there, but as you push towards the front corners of the palate, it certainly develops a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity. It's not spicy. Again, I find it really quite smooth, but it's got a bit of brightness to it, and I think that'll be the German hops. So you can feel the brightness sort of underneath, but you get the lovely smoothness of what I suspect is the Milvital hop on top of the Tettnanger ones that are in there. But around the front curve of the palate, the beer is a little bit lighter and grassier. The grass has a wee bit of zestiness to it, which I think would most likely be the sapphire. But yeah, you do get I do feel a wee bit of zestiness coming off this beer the further that you go into the aftertaste with it, and that's not a bad thing. That is definitely not a bad thing. But let's focus on the fruity part of the beer then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of a kind of crisp, kind of bread crusty note there. In the base of that front third of your palate, you can feel the sort of smoother, and you feel a nice kind of smooth and slightly sweet sort of brown wholemealy bready kind of note in there. But on top of that, you feel that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters come out of the beer. So yeah, the fruity notes in this one I think are a little touch more oily, but let's try and break that down. So yeah, on the back half of that middle third of your palate, then you do get a wee bit more of a little bit more of a sort of white. You get a wee bit of that kind of, not white green grape note. You get a little bit of that sultana type quality in this one. You can definitely feel a little bit of that in there. I could be tempted to say there's a wee bit of like a dried apricot note to this, to be honest with you. In the back half of that front third of your palate, the fruity notes, you certainly get a wee bit of a dried fruity character to this one. Like I say, a bit of sultana and a wee bit of a dried apricot for me. But as you move further forward into the front half of your palate, I think there's a more oily peary note comes out of this one. And then you can just feel behind the very tip of the tongue, I think there's a wee bit of an orangey character to this one. It's a little bit zesty as well. You do get a real little bit of zestiness on this beer just behind the very front tip of the palate, and it's quite, zesty. It's got a bit of that kind of nice big grassy zesty quality to it, this one, mixing in with a wee bit of orange, but there's maybe a wee touch of an appley note to this one, a spicy apple sitting on top of that. But yeah, big oily pear I think in the front, on the front half of that front third of your tongue. But yeah, the way that this beer goes together for sure is very interesting. So thumbs up to Brauhaus Gusswerk for this. I think they've done a very nice job on this beer, in fact. So yeah, I think that kind of rounds off the tasting of this one. As I say, it's got a lovely oily fruity character to it. The malt base in this one feels a bit lighter and a bit crisper, of course, and then the hops have got a lovely smoothness as well. So it's really interesting combination of things of this, but definitely one of the lighter and the crisper examples of this Vienna lager style that we've had so far. But it works, it certainly does work. We'd love to try a half litre of this in the tankard from the tap. Something for a later date maybe. I do need to go back and visit Austria, and Salzburg would certainly be on the list for sure. But yeah, let's round off the review then with the mouthfeel. So I would say this beer, kind of right in the middle of the light-bodied end of the spectrum. The carbonation is quite smooth. The beer feels very kind of clean, and as I say, there's an element of crispness to this, but a lovely smoothness to it as well. In terms of hoppy bitterness and things like that, I think this is a fairly standard, 20-ish IBU lager. Nothing really out of the ordinary about it. It does have a wee bit of zest, as we say, but the malt base is lovely and smooth, a little bit kind of, a bit smooth and a bit crisp, as we say, and a wee bit of sweetness coming out of it later on into the aftertaste, but a little bit of a dried fruity character, and a little bit of a dried fruity character and a more oily note in there as well. But yeah, the way that everything goes together in this beer is really nice actually. So yeah, this gets a thumbs up from me. This one was really quite different from the others we've had so far, and I think, if I remember right, I think we've only maybe got 2 other Vienna lagers to look at left now, so those are going to be interesting. I haven't tried this one. This one is probably the one that has varied the most from what we've had previously. So the last 2 I think could make for really interesting reviews as well. But yeah, let's leave it there. So this one is the Vienna Lager, 5.2% ABV from Brauhaus Gusswerk in Hof by Salzburg in the more kind of northwesternish part of Austria. This was really nice. I thought this was an interesting beer, a little bit of Märzen character to it for sure, and the Pilsner malt gives you a lovely kind of crispness to this one. Certainly a different vibe from the other beers, like I said. But thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this one in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brauhaus Gusswerk as well, and we will see about revisiting these guys to try a few of the other styles at some point in the future. But this was really nice. So once again, thank you to Hans for making this review possible. Check out my social media, check out Brauhaus Gusswerk social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and Prost.